We found ourselves scratching our heads over TikTok's viral pasta recipe that makes use of feta cheese and cherry tomatoes. It's a dish so popular, it's caused feta shortages in some stores. Here are all the reasons why this dish may not actually be as good as it seems. TikTok is not a purpose-made cooking platform. First, posts currently can't exceed a 60-second runtime, which isn't nearly enough to do real cooking justice. Second, much of TikTok's content is frankly pretty derivative. Take, for example, the TikTok feta pasta recipe that has become a sensation. The recipe seems to have come from the Finnish food blog Laimessa, which may have adapted it from yet another Finnish blogger. Smitten Kitchen says the first blogger may have adapted their own version from a classic Mediterranean dish, involving grilling a block of feta cheese with tomatoes, olives, and herbs. Wherever it originated, the TikTok feta pasta recipe basically involves baking a block of feta with cherry tomatoes and olive oil before topping it all off with fresh basil. American Instagrammer Mackenzie Smith posted about the recipe in 2019, and TikTokers took it viral. So viral, in fact, that American sales of feta have gone through the roof in the past month. Instacart's trends expert, Laurentia Romaniuk, told Mashed,
"Oh, sold out."
Oh, Fatih, I was hoping to have it for lunch.
The Evening Standard's David Ellis wrote in his delightfully grumpy review of the viral feta pasta recipe, "It's easy to see why such a thing would go so far so quickly. It's startlingly simple and looks delicious." The mired, charred, bright red tomatoes, along with a melty hunk of cheese resting in a pool of deeply golden, extra virgin olive oil, delivers a visually arresting sight. The whole dish works well visually as a siren song of warmth, simplicity, and abundant health, and it seems easy enough for even amateur home cooks to give it a try. So those home cooks ran out to the grocery store, picked up a block of feta, a bag of cherry tomatoes, and a bottle of extra virgin olive oil. They turned on their ovens, and in relatively short order, had themselves a big old pile of melty Mediterranean goodness. Many then tossed that result with boiled pasta and proceeded to eat with pride. Just ask Redditor Carrie, who gushed about it in a post. Of course, dig a little into Carrie's post, and you'll see that significant modifications were made, including the addition of mushrooms, artichokes, and spinach. In our opinion, those modifications are very necessary. We don't want to sound cranky, and we certainly don't want to ruin anyone's TikTok cooking fun, but the truth is that the TikTok feta pasta makes for a rather bland finished product. As user Cranky Reviewer 2 posted on a Reddit thread devoted to the viral sensation, it's very rich, very filling, and it's bland. So when they reheated their leftovers, they added mushrooms, ham, and various spices, which they say served to make the dish more palatable. Overall though, even with all those additional ingredients, their verdict was, "I will not add this dish to my weekday dinner rotation. It's not that interesting." For those who want to try adding some much-needed flavor, a pinch of thyme or rosemary, a sprinkling of oregano, and a liberal dusting of freshly cracked black pepper would do the trick. The TikTok feta pasta has an aromatic sauce with lots of umami flavor, even if it isn't quite a classic sauce that you might see in a culinary school or high-class restaurant. But any true connoisseur of Mediterranean food has to ask, where is the garlic? Yes, garlic is mentioned in blogger Jenny Haranen's recipe, but only as an afterthought. She writes at the very end, "Garlic goes well with baked feta pasta. To add garlic, cut 4 garlic cloves in half, lengthwise. Toss them at the same time as the tomatoes, and roll in olive oil." As long as you're not cooking for the famously garlic-averse Queen Elizabeth, or, say, a vampire.
It's just that I'm garlic intolerant.
Why exactly would you not revel in all the glory of garlic? Luckily, this is an easy fix. You can add halved garlic cloves before baking, or feel free to toss a couple of whole garlic cloves in the oil you're using. Then, let them roast along with the tomatoes. Once the dish is done baking, you can simply mash the garlic as you mix the sauce together. Something else that seemed to vex some Redditors is that starting out with an enormous block of feta cheese inevitably makes for a very tangy flavor profile. Redditor JoJam Jewel, who said they usually prefer food with a bit of a tang, felt compelled to add some honey to take the acidity down a notch. It's worth noting that the Finnish blogger, who likely started the feta pasta craze in the first place, used honey in their recipe too. Joe Jam Jewel wrote, "I'm super into simple recipes, but this just wasn't balanced enough to be enjoyable with only the bare minimum ingredients." The Redditor suggested that perhaps fans of feta would do better simply tossing some of it into some other light pasta dish, in effect using it the way people often use Parmesan on pasta. Reddit user Malofla suggested that the dish might benefit from a squeeze of lemon, though it would seem that would only add to the acidity rather than cut it. It's possible that starting the TikTok feta pasta recipe off with a 7-ounce block of feta cheese might be getting everything going on the wrong foot entirely. As Reddit user Malofla wrote, "I think it's crying out for a 30 to 50% reduction in the amount of feta." Another Redditor agreed, saying, "I love feta, but I saw a few of the videos and I personally think it's too much feta." Reddit user ChiliWilly44 revealed that they had the opportunity to try the TikTok feta pasta recipe when their fiancé made it. Unfortunately, it did not go well. "It was absolutely horrendous. I don't know how people even eat this. Every bite is so overpowered by feta cheese, it is brutal. I would never recommend this to anyone." Another Redditor pointed out that there's always the possibility of simply crumbling feta cheese on cooked pasta rather than cooking it first, reducing the intensity of the flavor. Something that seems to have been left out of the TikTok videos about the dish is that feta is not a one-size-fits-all cheese. There are many types of feta, varying greatly in texture and flavor profile. Bon Appetit explained, "Good cheese shops and some grocery stores will offer a few types of feta, differentiated by origin, milk type, and packaging technique. Sheep's milk feta is the classic version of this cheese, as well as the sharpest, while fetas made with goat or cow milk tend to be milder." Redditor SimpleDo18 made the astute observation that the particular kind of feta that you choose is crucial to how this recipe will turn out. They suggested that the feta flavor might be less overwhelming if a softer, milder version of the cheese were used, like the aforementioned cow's or goat's milk varieties. And if you prefer sharper feta, you can simply use a smaller amount than the 7 ounces called for in the recipe. The TikTok feta pasta recipe's pinch of salt is a pinch too much. Feta is already very salty, and there's really no way of knowing quite how salty it will taste once it's baked. Reddit user Alphion echoed that sentiment, posting, "Just made it tonight. We found it way too salty. Had to salvage it by adding more pasta and a dash of cream. And even then, it was not a particularly good dish. Instead of salt, an accent of a different sort might bring out the umami flavor a little better. Monosodium glutamate, or MSG, which has a less salty taste than standard table salt. And don't worry, MSG is perfectly safe to eat. Whatever dire proclamations your parents or grandparents may have made about MSG are not backed up by hard scientific facts. According to the Mayo Clinic, it may even help you avoid the pitfalls of too much salt in your diet." It's pretty fundamental to the recipe, so we honestly feel kind of awkward bringing it up. But despite that the thing has pasta in the name, it's a bit jarring to realize it's intended as a so-called pasta sauce. What you end up with here is not exactly a sauce. Even if you were to dump it into the food processor, which you shouldn't do, by the way, it would still be more of a spread than a classic sauce meant to complement pasta. So why should this non-sauce be used as a pasta sauce? Why does a lovely, savory Greek-inspired dish featuring tomatoes and feta have to involve pasta at all? Frankly, we'd much rather use it as a dip, perhaps for toasted pita triangles. Sometimes you just want a nice plate of pasta. There's nothing wrong with that. Perhaps that's why the TikTok feta pasta has caught on to the extent that it has, because it promises a big old serving of heavy carbs. If you're dead set on making a pasta sauce out of this recipe, might we suggest using some marinara sauce in place of the cherry tomatoes? Yes, we know that's not what the other kids on TikTok are doing, but you know who's doing it? Martha Stewart, who thinks that substituting marinara for the cherry tomatoes is a good idea. She wrote in a February 15th post to her Instagram, "Here, feta is baked in a pool of marinara. Serve the tangy, creamy goodness that results with plenty of crostini. It's good to the last drop." Or toss in your favorite pasta for an easy weeknight dinner. Stuart leveled up her advice for improving the TikTok feta pasta recipe even further by adding in a helping of smoky roasted piquillo peppers. Chili Pepper Madness notes that piquillo peppers are famous for delivering a little sweet plus a little heat. You can even turn them into a homemade condiment by cooking them over a medium flame for just a few minutes, then blending them with a bit of saffron and red pepper before adding lemon juice, salt, and topping with goat cheese. So there's definitely some wisdom in adding piquillo peppers to the TikTok feta pasta recipe. Consider simply tossing them in and letting them roast with the tomatoes and cheese. It might also be nice to roast them in the oven for a few minutes before blending them into marinara, as Stuart herself suggested. Whichever route you take, the addition of a slightly spicy pepper is a brilliant one in this case, and one that could really help spice up a dish that just seems to be missing something.
I see what I have to do now. I need a little spice in my life!
Tossing some fresh basil on top of your feta pasta will add a freshness that will no doubt enhance the end result both visually and in terms of flavor. But there are definitely other color accents that could be added to the recipe to make it less bland and less audaciously feta. Smitten Kitchen has a recipe for just such a dish, which is close enough to the TikTok feta pasta recipe that it may have had a hand in inspiring it. But just know it is so much more colorful than what you've been seeing on your feed. Smitten Kitchen's recipe makes clear that your tomatoes don't have to all be red. You can experiment with a rainbow of heirloom tomatoes, some of them with delightfully odd shapes and plenty of delicious flavors. This particular recipe also involves bright hints of flavor and color in the form of Kalamata olives, sliced onion, and flat leaf parsley. While you're at it, how about a nice drizzle of balsamic vinegar on top of the whole thing after it's finished cooking? Then you'll have something that tastes better and is nicer to look at. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more matched videos about food trends are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.